A Senate panel describes Y2K, the year 2000 computer bug, as a worldwide crisis and one of the most serious and potentially devastating events this nation has ever encountered.
They've stocked their shelves with soups, more than you'd find in some convenience stores.
That was a dragon's breath shell. It can shoot a 4,000-degree flame. It's also the most popular ammunition among Y2K customers at KGS Guns and Ammo.
K.O. is a devout Mormon. She firmly believes Y2K could fulfill apocalyptic prophecy in the Bible's book of Revelation.
That we're urging people strongly not to think that they can survive this alone.
December 31st, 1999. The world braced for collapse. Planes could fall from the sky, the power grids might collapse, and the banking system could fail. But yet, none of that happened. Back in the early days of computing, memory was expensive. To save space, programmers only used 2 digits for the year. 1989 would just be read as 89, for example. But when the year 2000 approached, a problem emerged. The computer systems would read 00 as 1900, not 2000.
There are at least 3 scenarios that should be considered at this time. The first is a probability of disruptions for a few days. Your plan should be similar to preparing for a natural disaster in your area, one that would cause power outages and transmission problems.
I wasn't alive for Y2K, but somehow was able to shape me into who I am today. That's because my dad, Ryan Mills, was convinced that the world was about to short circuit. And he had the canned goods to prove it.
The Y2K thing was pretty much all over the news, just nonstop, obviously turn the century is a big event. And then along with this big event, there's also this little caveat that, bad things could start happening if computers don't know the difference between what century it's in.
By this time, my parents had moved from Wisconsin to South Carolina completely on their own. They didn't have much at first, but that quickly changed once news of potential crisis went viral. The fear of banks shutting down, grocery stores closing, and gas shortages sent my dad into full prep mode. Over the next 6 months, he stockpiled as much as he could, just in case.
When I would go grocery shopping, I would just start accumulating some canned goods, this and that, Pop-Tarts, whatever would last, And really, we just had a big pantry in our kitchen, and I just kind of saved stuff there. I just knew in the back of my head that I had to give a few extra things,
To get deeper insight into the Y2K situation, I reached out to my mom to get her perspective on Y2K and how my dad was preparing.
I didn't find it a big problem until he made it sound like it was a problem. He has a way of making you feel like something could be worse than it was.
My dad at this point was at a time where he was trying to find himself. He was young and jumping from studying meteorology to working as an insurance adjuster. And at this time in his life, he was currently working in a hospital as an orthopedic tech.
He had a lot of time on his hands when he was on off. They only worked so many days on, and then he had a couple days off. So, he reads a lot, and he listens to a lot of newscasts and a bunch of stuff. And so with him reading and listening, he pulled out a lot of the stuff that was a negative. Yeah, he spent a lot of time organizing and getting ready.
One of the things he stockpiled was multiple canisters of gasoline, a decision he would come to regret.
That I put on the stairs leading to the basement, and I just kind of put it there and forgot about it until I opened up the door. And I had this horrible sinking feeling that I could have blown up the entire house because the gas fumes were so intense. And I'm like, holy cow, that was not smart.
One of the many traits I inherit from my dad is not feeling the need to force my opinions on others. Instead, he takes a much more tasteful approach.
Your mom actually did invite me to come to her work and talk about it, but it was more of a formal setting where we're sitting around like a meeting table, and we're just all sitting around, and I stood up and kind of talked about it, and some people asked some questions. And
since I worked at a foster care agency for therapeutic foster kids, that our families would need some of this information, that it might be helpful if they have machines at home to help the child breathe, or anything like that, that we had some backup plans. So I thought if I invited him to my work, that the people that I work with would be able to implement some things with the parents that we were dealing with.
He gathered a few people in the office to discuss the potential dangers of computer systems failing and how to prepare. But even as he warned them, he remained understanding of those who weren't worried at all.
I don't know if it was a mandatory meeting, but I mean, it was probably a nice 15-minute break in the day.
I really don't think anybody took it as seriously as he did.
If I had a choice to sit in a computer or hang out for 15 minutes talking about this, I probably would have too. So I'm not expecting to have the clout that someone that truly knows what they're talking about, you know?
A lot of people that I worked with weren't as involved in the news as your dad was, so many of them didn't think it would be an issue. I don't think they took it, went home and started stockpiling.
Many people at this time were not concerned with the possibility of these computer systems failing, as Bill Clinton, the president at the time, created a Y2K task force to eliminate any potential threats of a Y2K computer bug.
The federal government is Y2K ready and leading by example. We have completed work on more than 99% of all mission-critical computer systems, which means the American people can have full faith that everything from air traffic control systems to Social Security payment systems will continue to work exactly as they should. I am confident the Y2K problem, therefore, will not put the savings or the safety of the American people at risk.
Despite reassurance from the president, many of the Y2K doomsday preppers continue to arrange plans for the worst.
I guess the one thing that I did have to get was a pellet gun. I didn't want to get a real gun, so I just got a pellet gun. If it really went bad and people knew that we had a year's supply of Fenton products or Pop-Tarts, that kind of joking about that, but I just did think that there might be a safety issue involved, so really more just very lame attempt at safety.
I was not a fan of having a BB gun in my home. We did live in a sketchy neighborhood at the time, so he thought it would be useful in case there was chaos on the streets and people started, stealing. And
they also kept the fact that they were stockpiling a secret from the people around them.
I think the only family that knew about it was his mom and dad. We didn't really announce it. I think he was worried that if people found out, then we would be the ones trying to feed them or give them water.
Something that was not brought up when speaking with my dad is the fact that my parents got married in October of 1999, right before the actual Y2K crisis was supposed to hit.
Well, actually, I was probably pretty much finished planning the wedding. I started planning it in January of 1999. So since we were having a destination wedding, I had to start early.
I came to find out that one of the big reasons they were so frugal in their Y2K preparations was due to spending so much money on their wedding and their honeymoon to Asheville, North Carolina.
Well, that's why I said we didn't have a lot of money because we were spending it all. So we got back after the wedding, and then I think we went Wednesday, Thursday, Friday up to Asheville.
Eventually, the big day approached, New Year's Eve. And they celebrated the same way anyone would in their late 20s.
Yeah, we had a few drinks and had some fun, but it was kind of like this anxious anticipation of, is it going to happen?
Would ain't nothing like the ball in Times Square, crossroads of the world in New York City. This is the place to be, believe you me.
We had flashlights and candles, things just in case electricity went out, those kind of things.
New Year's came, and we were just kind of watching as, the eastern or the islands were, going through, and I'm like, okay, well, that, overly developed countries, but then once we got to Australia and New Zealand, and everything was normal.
As time passed, doubt grew that anything would even happen.
And I think, well, okay, maybe it's not going to happen right away. But then still throughout the night, you're not hearing any new stories about anything bad happening. And then it was us.
4, 3, 2, 1, happy 2000!
It was just another years.
And we kind of just looked at each other oh, we made it.
And then the next day, and nothing. So either it was slightly overblown or majorly overblown, or they really did an excellent job fixing the problem.
I really wasn't shocked. I was just thankful it didn't happen.
For some, the realization that nothing had happened was a relief. For others, it was a disappointment, and for many, it was simply the start of a new year.
The very next day, we spent the first day of the millennial at the Grove Park Inn in Asheville, North Carolina.
When I asked my parents if they still would have gone to the Grove Park Inn, even if my dad's Y2K fears came true, they said,
It's a good question. No, because we already spent money on it, but unless things were just like crazy or something.
We most likely wouldn't have gone if there was no electricity or no way to make payment. I think he would be worried about using our gas.
After that nice vacation, my parents came home to a basement covered in canned foods and survival supplies.
Nothing actually really went to waste either. I mean, I had maybe like one box of Pop-Tarts that went bad.
I also came to find out that my dad's obsession with stocking up on Pop-Tarts was actually due to my mom.
Actually, that was my staple of breakfast. I used to have Pop-Tarts every single morning for breakfast.
To date, the biggest disruption caused by Y2K was a VHS rental deemed 100 years overdue, resulting in a $90,000 late fee.
After all the worries and stuff, most people seem unfazed about it. They had confidence that the government would take care of the technology and that the computers would have no problem.
Doomsday preppers will always be seen as crazy until they're not. Y2K preppers ended up with garages full of canned beans, while pandemic preppers were suddenly the smartest people in the room. So maybe the trick isn't just preparing, but making sure you're betting on the right apocalypse. Thank you so much to my parents, Ryan and Kelly Mills, for letting me interview them about their experiences with Y2K. And I'd like to give another shout out to all the people who supported me while making this. You all are the best, and thank you for listening.